Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to today's show on Perspective. I'm Tayyaba Nisar Khan. Of course, we're going to be talking about the elections 2024 on Feb 8th, which are definitely happening according to the Election Commission of Pakistan. We know this is a very, very important, definitely a landmark history in Pakistan as well. Of course, these elections are carrying a lot at stake as well right now. We know that there are only 4 days ahead, and the political campaigns are in full swing. We've seen PPP, we've seen PMLN, we've seen JI, we've seen JUIF, we've seen ANP, others as well. And of course, the PTI affiliates also going and carrying out their political activities as well. Today in the morning, rather in the evening, we saw that PMLN carried out some political campaigns in Gujranwala. And not just that, PPP also went to Third Parker. Right now, you also saw Bilal Bhutto Zardari on the screens on your TV channels as well. Of course, ECP has been saying that these polls are definitely going to take place despite the security challenges that, of course, Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are seeing right now. We've seen the rally blast on the PTI rally as well. About 4 people died, 5 were injured as well about 4 days ago. And we also saw the killing of one of the election candidates as well, giving a rise on this political uncertainty in these areas especially, and especially the voter turnout that could be impacted by the security issue as well. But of course, there are other important systematic things that we have to look at as well, such as the system of EMS, which of course the ECP is going to use, and this is somewhat it's similar to the RMS and the RTS that was used earlier. But of course, we saw the failures of the result management system and the result transmission system as well. But we also will see if the EMS is going to work properly. They said that it's going to work offline as well in case there's an internet disruption. But of course, we need to figure out how this is going to work, because this was not tested earlier in any bi-polls either. So we will have to see and speculate if they're going to work properly as well. And not just that, but also we've seen the security situation going to the back front of the security situation. We've seen in Islamabad alone, there are about 5,000 police personnel who have been deployed. Many areas have been deemed sensitive as well. In Punjab, about 15,000 polling stations, roughly around 15,000 polling stations have been deemed sensitive. In Sindh alone, about 6,000 of them have been deemed sensitive. And of course, we already know the situation in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well. So of course, everything is sort of up in the air right now, but we do know one thing for sure, and that is that the political campaigns are happening, the election is going on, and everybody knows that this will, inshallah, take place as well. Let's see what happens though. Many people are saying that their votes have been transferred. We would also, of course, talk to our guests and ask them that if they were transferred as a pre-poll rigging that many people are saying, or if they were transferred, pardon me, or if they were transferred because of any situation at their end, for instance, not registering properly their vote as well. And of course, to check your votes right now, 8300 is the contact number where you can send in your CNIC and check where your votes are. The main candidates are out. Of course, we know PMLN, PPP, PTI, JUIF. We have far-right parties like, of course, TLP as well, JUIF, JI. And we also have the left parties such as the HKP as well. And we have the center parties like IPP is a new center party as well. PMLN is a center party, left party like PPP, etc., etc. So many of them have different ideologies, but all talk about the development of Pakistan. But at the point where Pakistan's inflation is high at a 28% right now, it has been curbed from the previous hike in the past 2 years, in the past year specifically, where Pakistan evaded default a couple of times. But of course, it's still at 28%, and economic challenge is very significant. PM Kakar, the caretaker Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Anwar ul Haq Kakar himself said that the manifestos, the 64-page manifesto of PPP, the 24-page manifesto of PMLN, they don't really show the economic policy's proactive approach. And we have to see that as well. Of course, we know that the caretaker setup was going with the FBR structural reforms as well, and the SIFC also approved of that. But then they also stopped that because of what they call the controversy, which could arrive. Of course, the caretaker setup was taking it up, and they are promising that a new elected government would be taking that up. So the economic policy, of course, is something we would be talking about. But first, we will be talking about the navigation of the political landscape. And for that, we have been joined by multiple guests. In the studio, we have been joined by Mr. Daniyal Sheikh, who is a political commentator and an analyst. Thank you so much for joining us. Online, we have been joined by Dr. Mohammad Hamza, who is also a political analyst. Thank you so much for joining us. We would be joined by Mr. Zahid Gishkori as well, who is a senior analyst. Thank you so much for joining us as well. We will be joined by him throughout the discussion after a while as well. But let's go to Mr. Daniyal Sheikh. Mr. Daniyal, of course, we know that there are different political parties with different narratives as well. The election manifesto we've seen as well. The economic situation, as I mentioned in my introduction as well, that's something very significant for Pakistan to be able to ensure a structural reform in the system and to ensure that this actually is taken forward by the other governments as well and structurally implemented as well to avoid Pakistan going into any such situation in the future. What is your comment on that?
My comment is the only party, I read the manifesto of PPP, but they don't address the economic issue as such. But as far as PMLN is concerned, I'll just summarize it. Basically, they're talking about cutting public spending, whether it could be development spending, it could be other, and they're talking about disposing of the units, the state-owned units which are not generating revenues. And thirdly, they're talking about the revival of the agro-based economy, and that is the only way forward.
Right. So the agro-based economy is the only way forward, and of course you talked about different developmental policies that were being taken up by PPP as well. They're really focused on building, for instance, 2 billion houses for the flood affectees as well. Mr. Bilal Bhutto Zardari has promised that recently in his public rally as well. Going on to you, Dr. Mohammad Hamza. Let's take a look at the political landscape that's been happening, the different promises that we've been seeing coming out from the election manifestos, from the public rallies as well, and the different narratives that we've been seeing coming out of these political parties as well. Which narrative do you think do we need, Pakistan needs? And it's, of course, it doesn't have to be from the manifesto, but which narrative does Pakistan need to be able to survive this economic crunch that we have gone through in the past year?
Thank you for having me. And you talked about the political landscape of Pakistan. So if we talk about the promises, you use the word promises. So at the moment, one of the things that I think most of us believe and most of us witness, that the promises is not a problem. The problem is hollow promises. So the credibility deficit is huge at the moment. So I don't think that putting things on black and white in a manifesto will make people realize that these parties are going to come and going to do something. Definitely in the election campaign for last couple of weeks, we are seeing there is a swing going on. The parties on the road, they are giving the economic promises. They are talking about educational uplift and this and that. But again, there are thousands of slips between the cup and the lips. Is it really going to happen? Are these parties going to have a consensus, an economic consensus somewhere, and they become an alliance, and or they make up an alliance and take Pakistan forward? This question, when we ask to people are not sure about it. I mean, many people have reservations, and the reason of those reservations is just the precedent. It's just the history of last 3 decades, where these parties have been promising a lot, but they've been delivering a little, and that's what you call an open secret now. So at the moment, credibility is a huge issue. One of the things that I think we need to look at is PTI's manifesto, though they talked about legislative reforms and other things. But one point in their manifesto is having a long-lasting effect, and that is called independent foreign policy. Now, one has to understand the economic situation of a country is not independent of the global system or global structure or global relations. So independent foreign policy is one of a point, I think, in one of a manifesto among all that has been actually raised, and that is important to consider.
Right, that's very, very important to consider as well. We have been joined by Mr. Zahid Gishkori as well as senior analyst with us. Welcome to PTV World. We're talking about the fact that Mr. Dr. Mohammad Ali also talked about that people are unsure who to vote for because they have lacked they formed this lack of trust on the politicians as well because the promises weren't delivered. We've seen a lot of youth coming out as well. There is a high percentage of youth coming out. Only 10% of the voters are above 65 years of age. And we've seen that most of the political candidates vying for the seat of the prime ministership and the top leadership of the political parties are over the age of 60, 65. So in this different sort of dynamics that are rising up right now, what in your opinion is the unsurety of the youth particularly?
Thank you very much, and hello and a very warm welcome to the guest as well. Yes, this time these elections look like having absolutely new dynamics. Particularly, you are focusing on political parties, manifestos. I want to add here that different political parties have given their manifesto to the people and voter, and Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz brings a detailed manifesto having experience, while Pakistan People's Party also focusing on human rights and women's rights as has its history. And Jamaat-e-Islami also carrying a very good manifesto. So it's a good thing, but the dynamics are different on the ground even. The level playing field and other most important thing is that this time around 39 million the very young voters would be participating in these elections, and they could change even the result and the expectations, and some could find very wonder and very new results in different constituencies. And one important thing is that it's a sort of a mixed thing. Right now, around 32% member National Assembly, former member National Assembly who are participating in different constituencies have been representing Pakistan in 1991. It means that the experience would come to the parliament. And secondly, different political parties also this time fielded women. At least 5% candidates consist of women contesting directly elections from different parts. And other important thing which I mentioned here, that it would be first of its kind perhaps that the independent look like the second parliamentary force in the parliament this time. And I can tell you why and how, because 41 electable, genuine electable, who have no political affiliations, having hot contests in their constituencies, and they could make their way to the parliament. And the other thing is that PTI, the third political party, of course, PMLN and Pakistan People's Party, and then the PTI, its candidate also contesting as an independent candidate. There is a possibility that from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and different parts of Punjab, the party could grab many seats. So it looks like that post-election scenario after 2 or 3 days would be very interesting, and who form the government in the center is very interesting. And other thing, which especially, there were many speculations and doubts and ifs and buts that either election would be held or not. But now it's clear, as we are discussing from your forum since days and weeks, that elections are going to be held. But the weather forecast is almost clear, but we don't know that either the turnout would cross the 50% or not. But this is not new. You know that Pakistan also witnessed at least 3 elections in this month in the past as well. So it looks like that it's a responsibility of youth this time, because the vote bank and the number of votes increased in Pakistan, and almost 120 plus million votes.
Right.
And almost we hope that the turnout would be quite encouraging. If the turnout comes out in a big numbers, then there could be a possibility that surprising results in different constituencies could come out. But this remains, of course, a puzzle. We don't know that what will happen. But interesting thing, again, the participation of women this time around 98% is much bigger as compared to previous elections in 2018. And one interesting thing again that this time that more than 17,000 candidates are contesting from 859 general constituencies, general seats, and this is a record number because more than 806, more than 28,626 candidates filed their nomination, which is a record in the recent history of Pakistan. And one other interesting aspect was in these elections that around 79% complaints and the many candidates whose nominations were rejected, otherwise they were accepted. This is a record. Otherwise, from 1990 to 2018, the successful ratio for the complainants remained 31%. It means that one political party was complaining that whose nomination paper were rejected right now. That looks like that 98% nominations were accepted overall. So something very new, interesting, but on the ground, of course, something very interesting as well. There was some allegation as well, and it remains in Pakistan history. You know, whenever the elections held, as a reporter, I have been covering elections since 2008. But this time, you know, it's a digital world, and the younger lot is quite very active on social media, and it was difficult for administration. But today, Election Commission of Pakistan called spade that the election management system and the security and the delivery of documentation and the many other arrangements have been completed. So it's a good sign for the trust of voters and candidates that elections are going to be held on Thursday, and at least nation would witness the historic moment. And we don't know that who would win, but one thing is interesting that elections are going to be held. Yes, please.
Right. Mr. Zahid, you've talked about multiple plethora of areas such as women, such as youth. You've also talked about the election management system. You've also talked about the electables, and you've also talked about how about 128 million voters are there, and the election costs and spending as well. I do want to go towards the system of the Election Commission of Pakistan and the system that they've laid out as well, and the cost that's coming out of that as well. But of course, Mr. Daniyal, let's talk about the women empowerment that has been happening in the country. We've seen that despite the fact that women make about 57 million voters who have been registered, there is a lack of representation of women in the political arena of the general seats, the elections general seats. Not many of them have been coming up. And even though the ECP had put a restriction of about 10% women quota for the general seats of the women, I personally feel that this still lacks. What's your opinion on this? Do you think in an age of 2024, in an age of women empowerment, there should be more representation of women, or do you think this suffices for now?
Before going there, we should look at the bright side, and which is Pakistan is the first country to have a female prime minister in the Muslim world and among a lot of other countries. And slowly our society is evolving towards accepting the woman's role in the workplace, and it's slowly you'll see more representation of women, but this cannot happen overnight.
Right.
Norms have to change, cultures have to change. But before that, if you just give me 1 minute, as we were talking about the manifestos of the political parties, and Mr. Hamza said that no political party delivered in the past. Just recently, there was a Bloomberg survey of the last 3 decades. The best economic performance was under Nawaz Sharif's time. And even right now, if you make a comparison of PMLN and People's Party, because the first thing that they're saying, they're going to double salaries, they're going to build 3 million houses, and then they're saying that basically all they're going to do is they're going to print more money and they're going to spend, which is just going to cause inflation. They're not talking about how to restructure the economy. Basically, the need of the hour is right now we need to stop public spending until we have our house in order, and for that, and unless we can grow, our GDP grows, at least we need to end this trade deficit, the deficit in the exports and imports. Until unless we do that, we should not even think about public spending.
Right, we shouldn't be thinking about public spending, but of course we do see that many people have been impacted. For instance, floods, if we talk about that, 2 billion people have been impacted by that as well. And they were talking about, PVP in particular is talking about bringing out the houses. And not just that, many other parties have been promising the welfare cards, they've been promising the higher education, etc., which is, by the way, a constitutional right as well. So how do we ensure that we do public spending, but we also ensure the economic reforms to take place and to ensure the economic uplift of the country?
See, the government's fundamental primary responsibility is to allocate resources.
Right.
Either you can spend them on the public, and which is a great thing if you could afford them.
Right.
But if you're taking loans from IMF and other countries and other donor agencies, and then if you're spending it on public welfare, I don't think it's a smart idea.
Right.
We have to stop this for at least till our economy is back on track and we can pay back our debts, and after that it's a great thing.
So what's the proactive approach in your perspective?
I think what PMLN is suggesting at the moment, that's the most proactive. See, the whole world is heading towards food shortage. So they're talking about agriculture, they're talking about facilitating the farmers. Now this is one thing with very little resources that you can do it. For the unless and until we have natural resources, we have a source of natural resources, going towards the industry is almost impossible. If you go back in 2019, when Imran Khan's government came, there was a very good LNG contract with Qatar. Without even reading it, just because the previous government signed the agreement, he just threw that agreement in the bin, and like 1 year later they went to the same people, but they weren't able to lock in the same prices. And this is the reason why today most of our industries have shut down.
Right, very interesting. Now, Dr. Mohammad Ali, I'm going to take the same question to you as well, with a pointer added that Bilal also talked about the 17 ministries being devolved, and of course 300 billion being spent over there as well is going to be reallocated as well. What's your opinion on that? How can we ensure and take a proactive approach? Whose proactive approach regarding economy is more significant at this time?
First of all, again, I would say the promises made by any party, we wish this all happens. But I'll get back to my fellow Mr. Daniyal's point that PMLN's tenure, when the surveys were saying that there was growth, I completely endorse that. But I will take him back to Mr. Musharraf's times when Muslim League Q was there, and still the numbers were showing, the global figures were showing that the Pakistan is moving ahead and the economy is getting strengthened. But the real question is, for me and for all panelists and for us, was that development or economic development was stable? So the long-term stability is a question mark, whether it was Ms. Musharraf's time or PMLN's time or whatever. The long-term economic stability is under question. And we always see that whenever the upheaval comes, the political upheavals or the tenure or the government changes and the new party gets on the reins, they come up with the numbers and they come up with the reports that show that the last government was a failure. Now, I understand that's a political fight and a political narrative, but the fact is we lack long-term planning. If we take the example of as my fellow said, that the PMLN's manifesto is more pragmatic in nature because they talked about agri-economy. So I must say that we are an agrarian economy, not for last 1 decade, but for last 6-7 decades. We are an agrarian economy. So if the promises or the economy is based on agri, that's wonderful. I think agriculture, livestock, meat, dairy, the foods, as my fellow said, the food sector, the shortage of food and the food things, that makes sense, and because we are an agrarian country. But the point is that it's not the only thing we can depend on, the promises and the figures. Stability, long-term planning and long-term stability. And I'll just give one example and I'll close my point, that if we just take an example of Singapore, back in 1965, they started actually their journey under Premier of Lee Kuan, and they just focused on 3 things: The first was meritocracy, the second was anti-corruption, and the third one was long-term planning. And that is only possible. That is only possible if we stop resisting each other and start helping and contributing toward country as an inclusive politics in the shape of inclusive politics.
Right, Dr. Hamza has raised $1 billion question of long-term stability and long-term planning as well. Mr. Daniyal, please.
Dr. Saab, in a few minutes, I would like to summarize, Tayyaba. See, in '99, when Nawaz Sharif said that he said to Vajpayee, let's compete in economics, let's not compete on war front. And after that, he agreed, he came to Lahore, and whatever happened in Kargil, let's not even go there. But having said that, now let's come to 2017. See, right now, one of the best thing for Pakistan is CPAC. You know, we can become a trade route for the entire Central Asia. And right when the Chinese premier was about to come to Pakistan, this one gentleman had a dream that it's about time to bring a revolution in Pakistan. He got in his container and he blocked the Constitutional Avenue for almost a year. So I agree with Mr. Hamza, we should not put hurdles, but we should also identify who is trying to put the country forward and who is not. One last thing about long-term planning, when in 1999, when Nawaz Sharif made the M2 motorway, a lot of people criticized it, and like for hours we don't even see a car. But today, had we not had the motorway, I think just commuting from Islamabad to Lahore would have taken us twice or thrice times longer. So a lot of other things I can mention, but obviously we don't have enough time.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Daniyal, by the looks of it, you also think that PMLN's manifesto was better for the foreign policy of Pakistan as well, seeing that you mentioned CPEC and China's relationship with Pakistan. But okay, let's go to Mr. Zahid. I think one of the questions that is very important for Pakistan right now is the question of electables. We know that electables have had a big role in Pakistan's history since the inception. And we also know that much of the electables, they come from those families which are either religiously influential or they are influential by their land ownership as well. Is there a possibility that we could change this demography in order to cut down on the electables? Or do you think they're good for the country's politics?
Listen, after 2013, that things are quite changing, no doubt, but across the country overall, it will take time, maybe 2 more decades. The reason is that if you just go through in different parts, for example, Balochistan, look in Balochistan, still almost all Sardars and the electable exist. They are in the top 5, and the clash of titans you can see in South Punjab as well. Again, and this time the thing is that the changing political loyalty have been a dilemma in Pakistan recent electoral history. If I can tell you that in 2008, around 29 member parliament changed their loyalties from only South Punjab, 3 divisions from Multan, Dera Ghazi Khan and Bahawalpur, and they supported one party. This was Pakistan People's Party. It formed the government in the center. In 2013, again 31 member National Assembly from South Punjab changed their loyalties just a month ago, a month before the elections in 2013, and joined Pakistan with Nawaz. And this party formed the government in the center. And then in 2018, this is very interesting, that serving the former member National Assembly who was associated with Pakistan League Nawaz, 61 former member National Assembly of PMLN in 2018 left the party and joined PTI just a month before the election in 2018. And then the PTI formed the government in the center. And now, interesting, it would be very interesting for you that 107 member National Assembly, former member National Assembly, out of 164 PTI had, they left the party. And now, 79 were directly elected from different constituencies, and they now have quit their loyalty. So this has been a dilemma in Pakistan, and no doubt that this is one of the prime reasons that they are electable. They have votes in their pockets, around 40,000 or 50,000, and they run their campaign and they win the election as an independent candidate, and then later on they join the government. They join the party, which seems forming the government in Islamabad. So it remains a dilemma. But one thing you were telling that only 5% quota mentioned in 2017 elections act. Only 5%, and this time it's perhaps a little less, because political parties are supposed to award tickets to 5% women in their constituencies. For example, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf fielded they are backing, the party is backing 714 candidates across the country and different constituencies, and they fielded 53 women. This is the highest number. And secondly, then Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz with 35 women, and then Pakistan People's Party with 28 women. And one thing is very interesting, that women are also in the hot contest in Pakistan. This is quite encouraging. I can count a couple of examples, like Dr. Fahmida Mirza of Grand Democratic Alliance from Badin. He is absolutely a very heavyweight candidate. And then from Bihari, it's Yamina Doltana of Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. And then Dr. Yasmin Rashid against Nawaz Sharif in Lahore. And then I can also give many examples where Dr. Nafisa Shah, Shazia Murray, and many other women who are contesting directly and giving tough time to their political opponents. It's a good thing. But one thing, this is my personal opinion. Of course, I abide by laws, but my personal opinion is that, as you know, around 292 women get through on reserved seats under the law in different parliaments, 4 provincial assemblies and here in the center. So they come on reserved seats. I personally think that there could be a law and all political parties establish a consensus in the parliament that they would award tickets at least 20% women on direct, and they could come to the parliament and they would not have any sort of any questions from anyone.
Zahid,
that they
in fact, this interparliamentary union that Pakistan is a part of actually ensures that all the member states of the interparliament union elect at least 18% of the women as well. But of course, I'm going to get back to you as well. First, Daniyal, please allow me to go to Dr. Mohammad as well to carry on this question regarding the electables. Dr. Mohammad, we know that many people who serve on the lands of these electables, the ones who have the large ownership of land, especially in Sindh and in South Punjab as well, many people are calling them political hostages. They're calling them voter hostages as well. Do you think this is in line with the free, fair, and transparent elections narrative that we want to bring out, or do you think we need some land reforms and other reforms to ensure that we curb such electables positions?
I won't go into detail of it, but I know that our neighboring country made the land reforms very quickly, very early in after their independence, and that helped them a lot. So yes, when people have control over the major resources, they manipulate the things, and that's been happening in last many decades. So we have to look into this issue, and I think none of the party has actually ever mentioned about this aspect of which you call dividing the power and bringing it to public. If you allow me, I'll get back to Mr. Daniyal's point, and he mentioned that in 1999, when Mr. Vajpayee was here, and that was, I believe, that was a good move, showing a gesture toward our neighboring country and bringing 2 neighboring countries together for the economic strength. But again, whatever happened, it means one only one party have in their manifesto that is called Establishing Truth and Reconciliation Commission to find out the blunders in the history. So I must say that PMLN and even PPP must add this point into their manifesto, so to pick out the historical blunders and fix them up. And second thing, when Mr. Imran Khan stopped or agitated or did not welcome when the Chinese premier was arriving to Pakistan, that was a bad move of the gentleman. So being an analyst, me or Mr. Daniyal or Mrs. Zahid, I think we have to be open to it that the consistency in our foreign policy is a major issue. And that's, again, in the manifesto of PTI, have an independent foreign policy. When Imran Khan visited Russia, that was not taken so gently. So it means we do not have that independence. And PMLN and PPP, I think they must have added this point into their manifesto as well.
Right, Dr. Mohammad, you earlier in your conversation, you also mentioned that Pakistan is probably not at a point where we can have a completely independent foreign policy right now, because of course the entire world is interconnected as well, and Pakistan is in the middle tier countries of the world economically, if we speak. Daniyal, I'm going to go to you right now and of course take the conversation a little further from the current conversation right now. We've seen that PTI, they have lost their case again, yet again, multiple cases in the past 6 days, in fact. And this was a fourth case, in fact. And many people are speculating that there's a possibility of PTI backing out of these elections. Do you see that happening?
I don't think so. I think they're going to contest, and the reason why they're going to contest that they're hijacked by a lot of electables, and for them to not be in the political race is almost impossible, and that's been the case with PTI from the start. But coming back to the issue of electables,
right.
The analogy that you gave, like you relate them to being spiritual healers or peers or big landlords, I, coming from rural Pakistan, would disagree a bit. I believe that becoming an electable, it's not just about your land holdings or your possessions, it's more about your connection with the people. I've seen a lot of big landlords who are not connected to their people and they're not able to get votes. So this connection of votes it's a bit more complicated. It just does not have to do with owning big lands or...
So Daniyal, in the age of social media, do you think the new electables could be the social media influencers for that matter?
To some extent, but I personally feel like the people who actually go and vote and the people who are active on social media, that the segment of society that actually goes and vote, it's very different from the segment of society that's very active on social media, especially in the rural parts of Pakistan.
Right, that's an interesting take, because of course we do know that the internet allocation in the rural parts isn't in fact as positive as we hope it to be as well. But let's go back to Dr. Mohammad. Dr. Mohammad, I want to bring out this issue of women as well. Of course, Zahid was talking about the women issue as well. He mentioned some very significant ladies from different significant political parties as well, including JI and including JUIF, including IPP, GDP as well. But of course, we do know that women from the higher hierarchical pyramid are the ones who are fighting these elections and who are coming out in these general elections on the seats that have been they've been nominated on. Can we expect the women from the lower tier of the society, from the lower tier of economic parts of Pakistan, and of course the social parts of Pakistan, them coming up as well, and the middle class women coming up as well and fighting for the elections and taking their rightful positions in the Parliament of Pakistan?
Definitely, the day will come, as earlier my fellow panelist has just mentioned. It's a gradual and incremental increase that would happen. But the interesting thing is that we have seen the bigger number of women. They are contesting the elections. They're not just coming on the reserve seat, but going to contest the elections. And if you talk about the class, so yes, it's a trickle-down effect. People who are financially sound or having certain powers, their ladies, when they will get into the political structure and this culture will prevail, the ladies and the women from the lower class, lower financial class will add up. And secondly, we have to understand that at the times of, I think, Shehbaz Sharif, after 2013 election, when he was a CM, there was a project launched in Lahore, and that was wow. That is an international project, that is Women on Wheels. So the project was to provide pink scooters to the women so they become independent in traveling. And that was a wonderful project launched by that time government. And that actually provided independence to the ladies to come on the roads on bikes. And we have witnessed that in the last few years that the amount of ladies on the roads on bikes and driving has increased. And likewise, the women participation in entrepreneurial activities has increased also. And that will one day will bring women to the stage where they will be participating politically aggressively, and that will help to make a new wonderful Pakistan.
Right. Zahid, going over to you now. Of course, how to bring women from wheels and offices into the Parliament of Pakistan to give them the authority and power to make the legislative decisions of about 50% of the population of Pakistan.
Listen, women in the Parliament, particularly in Senate of Pakistan and the National Assembly of Pakistan, they played an extremely good role. I can mention a few names. Even their participation in legislation, bringing private bills for the social welfare. I still remember that the role of Hina Rabani Kar, the Sugra Imam, Dr. Nafisa Shah. There are many women who played vital role in legislation. And no doubt that women, of course, are an integral part of our society. And interesting thing, with one political party, we have witnessed that Pakistan People's Party, which quite encouraged women. This time also they just have given a ticket to one lady from minority community from Bunair, and they have chosen a senator from community from Sindh as well. And there are many other examples as well. So it's a good, interesting thing that the one party is quite encouraging women, because it directly syncs to Benazir Bhutto, the late Prime Minister of Pakistan. And now in the race, again, this is a very good thing for Pakistan that Maryam Nawaz Sharif is the dominating candidate and almost the center stage of Pakistan, Muslim League Nawaz, pulling reasonably.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us, Zahid. Of course, a very fruitful conversation. Unfortunately, we are short of time right now. But of course, you've mentioned rightfully that more people, more forces from the minority community, and of course, women are coming up. And as Daniyal had already mentioned earlier as well, that this is an evolution, not a revolution that we want. And of course, an evolution we need to give some time. It's a positive development, and hopefully it will continue to develop in the future as well. Thank you so much, Daniyal Sheikh, for joining us, political analyst. Thank you so much, Dr. Mohammad Ali Hamza. Thank you so much, Zahid Gishkori, as well, for joining us. Of course, we're looking at the general elections 2024 on February the 8th to take place. Go out and vote. And of course, the Prime Minister himself, the caretaker Prime Minister, has said that the elections are going to bring the political stability, which of course we saw was a little more turbulent in the past 2 years. But of course, we are looking towards more political stability. But the question is that will this bring an economic stability for the long term in Pakistan as well? And that's the question we are going to leave you to. And please do think about that. We will be back tomorrow with The Perspective. Take care. Allah Hafiz.